Hello! Welcome back to Even More News, the first and only news podcast. My name's Katy Stoll.
You got that right. You know what else is correct? My name's Cody. Hi.
Your name's Cody, and you're sitting in a dark cave today.
It's a room.
It's a room. A well-lit room.
It's a human being's room.
Cody coming live from a human being's room.
That's right.
And, oh boy, this week we've got a good one, folks. Returning guest, New York Times best-selling author, Allison Raskin. Hello, Allison.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
We're thrilled to have you. You have a new book called I think, Conversations About Modern Marriage, which I love the title.
I feel good about this. I'm good to go.
We're off to a good start.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to be rude. Jonathan's also here.
Hi. Hello.
Hey, guy.
Hi.
It's happening. It's almost the end of Thursday,
If you're listening, it's Friday. And if you're listening, it's Friday, October 11th.
which is...
And on Friday, October 11th, it's my party day.
What holiday?
Apparently, this day encourages people to throw parties and celebrate for any reason or no reason at all. But this is Jonathan's editorializing now.
Yes.
But it's a strange way to encourage celebration since It's My Party immediately brings to mind the Leslie Gore song. It does. It sure
That's
does.
what I thought it was.
Which is about a girl crying at her party because her boyfriend dumped her. I know, it's not a strong one, is it?
It's not. No. They should cancel this day.
Allison, you've got a new book.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's basically a book that sort of examines modern marriage and the role that marriage plays now that, like, at least in a lot of parts of the West, we don't need it in the way we used to.
Uh-huh.
Like, it is now, like, culturally, for the most part, accepted to just, like, cohabitate with your spouse. A lot of people are having kids without being married. You know, women can get credit cards and mortgages without having a husband sign off for them. So we're just kind of at this like new point where it's like, okay, so why? And so I was really kind of curious to examine that because I'm someone who wanted to be married my whole life. Like I put a lot of value on marriage. And then I had a broken engagement in 2020 where my ex just like abruptly left me. And I was like, what? That's not allowed. We made this commitment to each other. So it was sort of like, what is my relationship to marriage now that I no longer see it as like a safe haven, but as like just like kind of just like very much a calculated risk? Like, what is it worth that? And my takeaway, my favorite review was someone said it was an agnostic take on marriage.
Okay.
And I really like that.
I like that.
Because it's not like necessarily a pro or anti-marriage book. It's really like marriage is what you make it. And some people don't care to.
Yeah. I think it's so fascinating. I'm excited to read this. That's very relevant to my own personal journey and a lot of, not just my female friends, all of different types of friends, having these conversations. It's like, yes, we were sold this idea of it, and growing up, this is the goal, right? And this is how you know you've got commitment. Oh, and there's financial benefits or whatever, but that has changed. And it's not necessarily financially beneficial for anybody. It's interesting. It is and
it isn't. You know,
it is and it isn't. It's just not necessarily the strongest argument for it.
Well, it does two different things, right? One, it kind of puts you at risk, right? Because now you're binding yourself and your finances. I mean, there are ways to protect yourself, like having prenups, postnups, also like keeping your premarital money and assets separate so that if you do get divorced, they have no ownership over that.
Yeah.
But there's also something to really be said about the power of doubling your money and like the power of pooling your money to then be able to take, you know, higher risk investments, to be able to like afford a house together sooner than if you were trying to do that on your own. Like there is a lot of benefits to going at the world as a unit.
Yeah.
You know? And I think it's this catch-22 thing where like the studies are like married people are happier and wealthier than unmarried people. But then it's also like, but are people that are happier and wealthier more able to get married in the first place?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
You know,
they're in the
like,
position where they have their
That's
life sort of lined up for that, and so they're still happier. They were already
and they're still
happier.
wealthier.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people feel like they're not able to get married. It's actually kind of become this classist issue where it's like, oh, I'm not financially stable. I can't afford a big wedding, or I can't afford to buy a home or have children, and therefore I'm not ready for marriage. Where I think a lot of times that gets in people's way when actually like being married like we were talking about, you can pool those resources, you can get that emotional support, you can do all of these things that would then actually maybe make it easier for you to achieve those goals. And so we've kind of like made marriage like too hard to achieve in society in a way for the people that want it, at least.
Right, yeah, because there are these sort of like markers laid out of like, here's what you do before marriage, here's what you do after it. And we're in this position, like you're saying, where like, well, you can sort of become a team and work towards those pre-marriage goals together if you need to,
yes.
or sort of figure out what works the best for you and learn the lessons that boomer marriages maybe have taught people.
Well, speaking of learning lessons, I don't know. I'm pivoting to the news.
Oh, lesson learned.
I liked the pivot.
Thank you. Specifically, Hurricane Milton.
Yeah, we're recording this Thursday, so people listening to this will know more than we do. They're assessing the damage from Hurricane Milton, which hit Florida on Wednesday night. From what I saw, it looked like a cold front may have weakened it as it hit, so it wasn't the worst case scenario that we thought was possible, but it still did quite a bit of damage. As of right now, at least 7 dead and millions left without power. And of course, this comes right on the heels of Hurricane Helene about a week and a half ago, and there's a ton of misinformation that has been spreading around the X and the other places.
Probably mainly the X.
To the point that FEMA had to put out like a fact sheet, which I'm sure will convince people because of course FEMA, of course the people doing the thing would say that the thing isn't happening. And we can go through some of these bits of misinformation and what and who is behind them.
It's really hard to sift through what's true and what's not anyway on the Twitter. But there's a lot of blowback or whatever from people saying like, see, this is the media sensationalizing. It wasn't so bad. First off, it was quite bad. Again, on the heels of Helene, a catastrophic storm. And we don't know. That's the whole point of what we're experiencing this moment in time is like we don't actually know how it's going to hit and how it's going to land. Would you prefer people to have not been warned? I also understand how hard it is to be evacuating and the expense of it, the stress of it, and needing to leave work in the midst of in the middle of the week and haul your family and pay exorbitant prices for gas and the stress. But again, what about the opposite? So it's a tricky balance, but then we get this attention on Twitter where there's all this misinformation floating around and then nobody trusts anybody. And I think that you can point to the fact that, I mean, again, I'm sure that maybe we won't hear of more casualties. I sure hope not. But you can guarantee that it would have been worse if people hadn't evacuated.
Yeah. Well, it's very depressing, actually, sort of how people prepare for things and learn about things and consume things and just sort of view the world as like all the weathermen are in on it now to like trick you and get you. And like, I mean, we'll go through the specific claims about like the weather machines or whatever, but it's just like, it's a real thing that's happening in reality and people are dying and like all this, like there's all this damage and like, it's just so, I find it hard to sift through of like, are you being malicious or are you the victim of somebody else who was malicious and being like spreading misinformation or like getting you into some sort of conspiracy minded thing? And it's just very frustrating to sort of see everything and just be like, it's unsustainable. And in the same way of like with climate change generally, you see a lot of people like, well, it's not as bad as they said it would be, or like, well, if it doesn't happen, then it didn't. They were wrong, or whatever. It's like, well, if you predict a thing is going to happen, maybe it won't be as extreme, but also you're doing things to mitigate that, and so it's going to be less. Like in an ideal world, it is less extreme because we're doing things to mitigate that, and so you get this mindset of like, well, they were wrong. No, they were right. We just did something about it.
It's so sad to me that like we should all be celebrating this cold front instead of being like, told you so. You know, like,
right.
It's just like created this environment where like when actually a good thing ended up happening, it's like, well, that means you've been lying to us the whole time. Like, it's like everything is taken as bad faith.
Yes. And sort of it tiered off in a way where like climate change, obviously like it's a hoax, you think, and that's not fine, but whatever. That's just how it is now. but now it's like weather stuff. Where I mean, I don't know if we'll get to it. There's a cat turd tweet. I'm so sorry for bringing up cat turd, but it's just this tweet about like, first they said 135 miles per hour, then they said 150 miles per hour, and it's just like a list of a range of like 130 to 160 miles per hour winds, and he's like, I'm never watching the weather again. They're giving you a range of like, you can watch all of that and go, oh, high winds. They were right about that. It changes every once in a while, but the information is that there are high winds out. Like,
you didn't learn in 4th grade that wind is constant. It's one speed always.
I know. But like, no, it's just like very frustrating to see that and be like, are you malicious, or are you a victim somehow, or are you just a stupid liar? Like, I don't know what the situation is.
Probably all of it, but
probably all of it.
I do think there's a sincerity for a lot of people.
Yes, it's very upsetting.
And part of it is the amount of misinformation that circulates around, and we'll get into some of this. And so people are following people that present themselves as knowing what they're talking about, and it's really hard. I know
they got that blue check.
Banged on this drum a lot over the past couple of years, but it's so hard.
It's so much worse too. I don't know if you saw it. There's like the AI stuff is like really close. There's a fake news report that was like filtered some CNN article or whatever, and it's like a woman in a space doing the news, but it's not. It's an AI video, and it's like really close, and it's going to get so much worse. People are going to believe the stupidest, wrongest things in the world, and then they're going to be elected to Congress.
People still are talking about how Maui was some sort of psyop, some sort of direct energy targeted attack, and they believe it. They believe it.
They gave Maui Havana syndrome.
And it's just gonna, and so I have seen some people saying like, just like in Hawaii. Like, come on, guys.
You mean the weather?
Well, okay. There's a couple categories here, and I'm not going to go through all the specific granular things. There's two big ones I want to bring up, and one is one that Trump has spread, and one is, well, it's a Marjorie Taylor Greene / everyone else thing.
Mm-hmm, an ex-blue thing is basically her. Yeah.
So the first one is a Trump one, and he's just doing it because it's political election time, and he's been going on rants, and you basically have to piece together what he's saying because it's Trump. And he is saying that the Biden administration stole $1 billion from FEMA and gave it to the migrants because, of course, the illegal migrants are a part of this. He said it a bunch.
Everything.
Over the last week. It's not true. FEMA they provide assistance to hurricane victims and they provide assistance to migrants, and the money is from two separate buckets. And the money is typically not taken from one bucket and put to another, except for when the Trump administration did it. In 2019, they took they proposed taking $271 million allocated for FEMA's natural disaster prep, and they diverted it to pay for the detention and transportation of undocumented migrants.
See, this is how he knows that money for FEMA is being spent.
Exactly, because he did it. Yeah, exactly.
But I also wonder the role that how people have to fend for themselves plays in this. If we just had better infrastructure for helping people during these natural disasters, where it wasn't the huge financial hit and there was, I know there was busing, I know there was some help, but if they really had amazing infrastructure, days ahead, okay, you're going here, we will evacuate prisoners, we will evacuate prisons, we will take care of everyone, this will not dramatically impact your financial life moving forward. If there would be this resentment towards evacuation and this desire
absolutely.
To think that it's something else.
I agree with you completely. I have said this at various times on this show and in my life. And I wish it feels like such an easy thing for everybody to get behind. whether or not you want to admit that climate change is real in the way that we all like, this shit's happening. It's causing massive damage. We need to shore up we need infrastructure spending, to make people safer. But or programs like this to keep people safe. This is a massive thing. Like, it shouldn't be against the best interest of either party to be investing in our country. Okay, just use it as the excuse even if you don't believe it. Let's get some roads. Let's create transit that's high speed, that can get people from point A to point B without sitting in traffic for 15 hours. Wonderful. Why are we arguing about this?
Yeah.
Sorry.
And like, the GOP would definitely be able to figure out a way that's not socialism, right? Because we would be like, isn't that socialism? And that's good.
Yeah,
and they'd say, like,
no,
it's just old-fashioned American jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a Department of Defense that is more of a Department of Offense. Why don't we have like organizations and like something more than like FEMA that is like, no, it's happening more and more. It's worse and worse. We are dedicating a lot of resources to this all around the country because it's going to be earthquakes, it's tornadoes, it's hurricanes, all kinds of stuff, it's fires. There are all kinds of disasters that will be worse and more of. And so maybe we take some of that military money over and just sort of use a lot of that equipment that's designed to kill people and maybe divert it over to saving people in these kind of scenarios.
What a thought.
We would need like a department of like security for the homeland. I don't know if anyone's thought about that. Like a department for like homeland security, basically.
Oh, I was going to say
Protect
workshop
us.
it, but I think you nailed it. I think you
Kind of rolls off the tongue.
I mean, it maybe sounds a little like fascist, but no. It depends on how it's used. Okay, so the other genre of claim is the kind of conspiratorial, quote unquote, they are controlling the weather and are intentionally sending hurricanes to destroy Trump country.
Before we get into it, sorry, Trump country doesn't exist.
Right.
Everybody lives everywhere. We're not like, this isn't like, oh, that place deserved the disaster. This place, everybody lives everywhere. There are concentrated areas where more than one side lives there, but everybody lives everywhere. I haven't seen a whole lot of the whole like, they deserved it, they voted for Trump or whatever this time around, which I think maybe we've moved on from that, which is nice.
Which is a good thing. Yep.
Which is a good
They'll
thing.
do that once they realize that Florida is not going blue.
Right. Yay.
But they shouldn't.
They shouldn't. And just this idea of like, they're sending it to like a Trump country. Biden people live there too, or Harris people, whatever you want to say, Walls people. I don't know. It's all just the people. I don't know.
It's the same thing as the conversation last week when Donald Trump legitimately considered withholding aid to California. Because
exactly.
they're all
Unless they voted
Democrats
for him.
Until he was like, oh, wait, there's Orange County has a lot of
Orange County's
conservatives.
in California.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is like, I do think it's election time. There's a lot of tension. Everyone's going to like stick to their talking points. I think it's easier to get through to people with the Biden administration didn't steal $1 billion from FEMA and give it to migrants. Here's the proof of that. There are legitimately a lot of people who believe that a group of Democrats or some other they are like can use cloud seeding or something to strengthen hurricanes, right? And they'll say, no. I'm not saying they're making the hurricanes out of nothing. The hurricanes are there, and then the Democrats are making them a lot stronger and sending them to places where Republicans live. And I don't know how to combat that level of thinking. So
yeah, that sounds dumber.
Almost impossible.
Somehow.
What's happening is like we have a lot of people that are in a cult. And it used to be that like if you were in a cult, you just like lived together on a commune and like you were in one area and like whatever. I mean, not good, but like you were concentrated. But like the internet has allowed all of these people to be brainwashed under the cult of Trump, and like to take people out of a cult is like tricky. It's not like a thing that you do in one conversation, or like, like people would have to like hire people to get their family members out of cults and to like unlearn what they did for like 3 days in a house, and so us expecting ourselves to be able to like get these people to stop these beliefs through like one nuanced conversation, I feel like is unrealistic to put on ourselves, because they are basically under the rules of a cult and view the world through that lens.
Especially when especially when most of the conversations just by design have to happen online, unless you're like there, like you're saying, like, yeah, you have like a compound and you're isolated. That's so much of bringing people into a cult, is isolating them from the rest of the world. And so you have all these people who are isolated, like in their lives, they're isolated and they're in their little cult space, but they are also online posting to everybody. So it's this mix of isolation and just overexposure to everybody. And it's really hard to sort of navigate both of those spaces in a way that is effective.
Again, just the proliferation of different information from bad actors that you can or can't verify. I forget, we've talked about this a lot on the show over the years, but just the nature. Also, our government isn't very transparent about things, and people do expect to be lied to. People do feel like it's David versus Goliath in general with our government and the media system, and that just doesn't help. It makes people primed to think this way, and I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because you can't really put that stuff, the controlling the weather stuff, back in the box, because Elon Musk tweeted something like no one really believes that Democrats are controlling the weather with like
LMAO.
LMAO.
Something like that, yeah.
And then you look at the replies to that and it's like, no, sir, check out this Alex Jones video. It's like, well, no, they're not controlling it, but they're doing this. Or even worse, it's not the Democrats controlling the weather, it's the globalists, right? And it's just like 100 tweets like that.
There it is.
And not that Elon Musk is going to put a ton of effort into combating that, because that's not what he wants,
he's
especially over the next month.
No, this is exactly what he wants. He wants that interaction.
This is all for him.
Or the lizards, the lizards. Because the lizards are actually nonpartisan. The lizards are all parties. The lizards
well, it's the
don't have an affiliation.
Something I've been doing recently is like I won't try to engage in changing someone's mind. I'll just go, oh, okay, we disagree about that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
The human condition is so uncomfortable with disagreeing with somebody that a lot of times we like saying that, then people end up being like, but yeah, like this weird thing about like psychology is like, it's just so people can't handle that I disagree with you. And so like it kind of, even if like they start off on the offense, suddenly they're like looking for this way to find some common ground with you.
Right, because they want to fight. They want that conflict to sort of justify their position almost in a way. And when you're like, okay, you're like, wait, but I need to justify my position.
Right, just be like, yeah, I just totally disagree.
I find that to be such a good tactic myself when I'm having conversations with people and I can see that this isn't going to go anywhere. Where I go, well, I disagree with you on that and try to change the subject. But I do find that also when people aren't bad faith,
it's okay to disagree. Like, you're not attacking me.
Right. You're still sitting here and talking to me and we're just changing the subject. Okay. And then I have found that that's a little bit how I've built trust with people to be able to continue to have a conversation. And then maybe next time it's like, I'm not going to make progress here, but here's another piece of information I'll be like, hey, wait a minute. I wanted to hear your thoughts on this. And they're going to come at it a little less defensive. I don't know if that resonates for anybody out there that have these conversations in your real life, but I've found that to be very true. And for the thing that you've said, like another way is like, wait a minute, what do you mean we just disagree? And then you find them
so used
trying
to having
extra
to
hard.
Fight it out, yeah. And to just like opt out of the fight, I think can sometimes jar people.
Yeah.
And it's also just self-protective. And instead of saying like, f you, you're a monster, could you disagree with me? It's like, all right, have your opinions.
Yeah, or like spending your time like trying to like articulate your argument, or like going to find an article and summarize it or send them that, and like trying to do that is a lot of work that will probably be fruitless.
Exhausting.
So just be like, yeah, we disagree.
You can just send them the link to this research right here that I've put together. Like it's there for you. I should make these public.
Oh, Jonathan,
really.
I have thought about it. several times. I'm like, maybe I should just send this research doc.
Yeah.
I've got bullet pointed arguments here. It's very reasonable.
He makes it very clear.
All right, I'm going to play this clip. It's short. He's on the Hugh Hewitt show. Trump is on the Hugh Hewitt podcast.
How about allowing people to come to an open border, 13,000 of which were murderers, many of them murdered far more than one person, and they're now happily living in the United States. You know, now a murderer, I believe this, it's in their genes, and we got a lot of bad genes in our country right now.
Yeah. Yes.
I think that's alarming.
I do too.
It's
Wow, me
incredibly
too.
alarming.
I don't
yeah, it's
like it.
like so many people have like not worked on developing those skills because like at face value, it's like, oh, I guess bad genes like could cause someone to be a murderer. But then it's like, let's take a step back. What does it mean to be talking about a population's like genetic makeup? Like, what does that say? Who else has made comments like that? What is the history of making comments like that? And like, I feel like his followers, like I'm someone who thinks that a lot of people that vote for Trump, it's just fueled by racism and sexism. But I also think there are just some people that refuse to do any critical thinking about what he is saying and the implications of what he's saying. And they take it at like quote unquote face value, which to them, they can then have like that cognitive dissonance of like, yeah, but he's just making a point that like these people tend to do that. And so maybe it is genetic.
Right. And then, yeah, and there's just this sort of like, okay, so if he does think that, what else does he think about people's genetics? What kinds of people have what kinds of genetics? What are those opinions of his? And what does he want to do about it? Like, if you do think that people have criminal genes, then you probably also think that certain types of people have those criminal genes. So, like, what do you want to do about those certain types of people who you think have criminal genes?
And who are those certain types of people?
And who are those certain types of people? And why do you think that, like, there's so much of that people just hear and like, oh, they said a weird thing.
He'll signal to this. He didn't explicitly say it, but he's saying this comment in the context of immigration. So he's allowing people to fill in the blanks. But then as soon as you start pointing this out, it's like, well, he didn't say that. We don't want murderers in our country. But like, he did say that.
He did.
And this one, well, my ultimate point here with this specific quote is that this one feels hard to wiggle out of. This one feels hard. It's the Trump thing that he does all the time. And you're like, I got him. And they're like, people say like, well, you didn't specifically say, inject bleach, whatever. But this one feels harder to wiggle out because, like, what else are you saying in this context? Right, but it's like
no, it's very straightforward. It is explicit.
I don't want to talk for 3 minutes here fact checking this thing, but like the thing he is saying is wildly untrue. He says Kamala Harris, but he's suggesting that the Biden administration let 13,000 murderers over the border, and they are now living happily, freely in the U.S.
That wasn't true?
I mean, it's not even a snippet. Like, that number comes from a letter that the acting chief of ICE sent to a Republican congressman from Texas who was asked, how many non-citizens who were not detained by ICE have criminal convictions? And the letter says 13,099 non-citizens in the U.S. have been convicted of homicide and were never detained by ICE. Trump did not say that those are just non-citizens. Some of those people were here legally and some people maybe not. It didn't specify what is the range. This data goes back decades. So most of those people were here before Trump was even president, going back into the 80s. He said they were living freely in the U.S. And no, most of them are incarcerated because, again, they are convicted murderers.
Because they have that data of the murderers, yeah.
Right, the idea that it is the great Hannibal Lecter and 13,000 other murderers wandering over and living in, I don't know, Springfield, Ohio is such a remarkably not true thing to say.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. And again, alarming.
I did just talk for 3 minutes debugging.
No, that's good. That was necessary because again, like you hear when I heard that clip for the first time, I was like, well, that's up. Obviously, was my first thought. But also like all the stuff you said, I assume that that's all lies. Like whenever he says a number like that, talking about immigration specifically and crime, I'm like, oh, he's lying and he's saying this Hitler thing. But it is really helpful and good to point out in what ways those are lies, because again, he's just using these lies about immigrants are criminals to tie it to also it's because it's like in their blood. It's just really fucked up because I feel like back in the day when he was the president, people would be like, sir, some of your things you're saying are reminiscent of Adolf Hitler. And his response would be like, well, I don't think so, or whatever. And he would just sort of keep going. Like, he wouldn't be like, oh, I'll like adjust that, or like, oh, I guess that's a problem. You know, like there's a way to be told that you're saying like Hitlerian things and not be like, well, nah, I'm just going to keep doing it. And just to get to this point where he's said that immigrants are poisoning the blood of our nation and it's because of their criminal genes is just, I can believe we're here now. It's very believable, but you know.
I mean, the thing, a lot of times you're like, how can somebody listen to this and like support this guy? But if you believe that certain people are quote unquote bad and that they're going to harm you, and then everything in the world is filtered through that lens, you're like, great point.
Exactly.
know?
Yeah.
And so like, if you have truly been, you've drank the Kool-Aid, you just really believe this, you know, like being quote unquote racist doesn't offend you because you know that white people are the superior race, then like that explains everything. It's just like the lens through which people are viewing the world. And it's a horrifying lens, and it's not an accurate lens, but like, I'm not going to change your mind by saying that like he's saying white people are better. They're going to be like, yeah, they are.
Exactly.
Yeah, I do think that there are some people that have drank the Kool-Aid in a different way and that genuinely don't like these elements of when he mouths off, but also I get a sense from some people, this immigration conversation goes back and forth all the time. Every administration, it's a conversation. And so they may be desensitized to this element of it. Or
I think that's only like a portion. It's a portion of his followers. And then the other portion are just like, I don't care about anyone but my own well-being. And as a white man, my life and my bank account, I think will be better under Trump. And therefore I shall ignore everything else.
So you're saying there's like a basket of deplorables, like a
basket
of
a basket of deplorables people, like baddies, a basket of baddies.
It's like at the end of the day, this man is awful, and I don't like the stuff he says, but I was doing better financially under his administration, and I can argue till I'm blue in the face about why that might be, why, you know, but at the end of the day, that's what they're fear-based. It's just a different, but yeah,
right.
I'm not
but also, but at a certain
point,
point, there's something about like that at a certain point where it's like, okay, but you need to acknowledge that you are admitting that you're fine with the Hitler stuff because, like, yeah, okay, your bank account was bigger, you did this, like, I like this, he does this, okay, but the Hitler stuff, and you have to sort of just be like, yeah, I'm okay with that. Because of this, and if you're making that calculation, okay, I guess, but to like be like, oh, he says some things I don't like, like that's like kind of like a cop out to me of like, no, you need to own the Hitler stuff because otherwise you're like lying to yourself about like what's really going on. Sure. Okay, your bank account's going to be bigger, and they're going to try to mass deport 11 million people because the president thinks they have bad genes,
and they're going to track your daughter's periods, and they're going to, I mean, that's the question is like, how can they avoid the responsibility of voting against all these people's interests because it's in their interest? And like, how do you rationalize that to yourself? And what we're learning is people are pretty good at rationalizing.
Oh yeah,
I think that when they're really struggling and see this, then like at the end of the day, I think people. I'm not disagreeing with anybody here. I agree with you, obviously. But I think at the end of the day, maybe that doesn't cut through the way that we would hope when, you know, they're trying to And again, I don't think Donald Trump's going to fix that for them. I think he's going to make it worse. So all of it. Anyway, I think people listening to the show know that I have a hard time with generalizations. So I, say this.
I don't think we're generalizing either. I think it's just like with specific stuff like this, it's like, what could he say? Like, what's the most Hitlerian thing he could say that would be like, okay, that's it? Like, does he have to say like who he's talking about? Or like, what is the line actually?
Yeah,
because
probably.
he's constantly getting to that line, and at certain points, like, do you think he doesn't know that the line is there? Do you think he's not slowly walking towards it?
There's always going to be some justification. I do think, that's like me feeling sick about it. Like, it's true. Like, I don't know what the line is that is like, you know what? This man is a monster.
Well, I think a lot of people also go, he's just talking. He doesn't mean it.
Totally.
The
Allison,
amount of people
sure.
that go, he doesn't mean it. It's like, he's telling you he means it. He's telling you what he plans to do. And they all go, nah, he won't go after Democrats. He won't jail his enemies. He's just talking.
No, you're completely correct. They just think it's words and that he says whatever. And it's like, obviously he's unpleasant, but like, he doesn't mean that. No one's going to let him do that. All the time I hear that.
Why does he say it?
No, I'm like, okay, well, let's not only talk about Donald Trump.
He's only one of two people who want to be a president.
So unpleasant.
And the other person must be just crushing it out there.
Must be, right? How's
Against somebody
Kamala
like
doing?
that.
How's our other conservative party? I'm sorry. How's Kamala doing?
Yeah, well, I don't know. A lot of people out there might have felt kind of a vibe shift lately. The polls are basically where they were in the last month, but it just feels not great
feel good,
as
does
we
it?
get into the home stretch. And one of the reasons that may happen is because the Harris-Walz campaign very clearly has a strategy of, we're not going to lose progressives. They're voting for us no matter what. So we've got to go after gettable centrists and Republicans. So every word out of their mouth, or not every word. I don't want to like
Every other word.
I don't want to
few
jump over the
words,
fact that the Medicare covering long-term home care would be a huge deal for people. But every other word out of their mouth is about how great Republicans are and how cool they are doing a bunch of Republican stuff. There's the bit, and I can play a clip of this. On The View.
On The View?
Yeah, let's watch The View.
Let's watch
Kamala.
The View.
I cut
Just like
to
any
that
other day.
now.
Just a regular Thursday watching The
I
View.
mean, that's just what we do here is we play
I know.
clips from The View.
Yeah.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact. Listen, I plan on having a Republican in my cabinet. I got a list. Yeah, right. You asked me what's the difference between Joe Biden and me. Well, that will be one of the differences. I'm going to have a Republican in my cabinet because I don't feel burdened by letting pride get in the way of a good idea.
Yeah. Right.
I feel like Joe Biden did say he would put a.
He said he might. He was open to it.
He said he might.
He signaled the similar thing. I would have loved if somebody who was in proximity of that conversation would have been like, who?
Why?
What? Like, as an example, who and what would they be doing? For what reason?
What is... Yeah,
from
what's
the
their
Republican
good idea
Party.
that we
What's
don't
their
have?
good idea, exactly. And if you think they have a good idea that we don't have, why don't you just take that idea and do that idea without involving these people who, up until a month ago, your vice presidential candidate running mate was calling them fascists out loud. Maybe we don't need to dance that dance. I don't know.
We already have a conservative party. You can't out conservative the conservative. We just see it like your immigration. We already are. We go right with the immigration policy. They just take it even further. Like
it's frustrating because this is it's a strategy they chose, and maybe it will work. We don't know.
We don't know. This could be based on all of their polling and what have you. magic that they're making behind the scenes, that this is the best thing, to just be pretty bland, pretty milquetoast. Stick to these talking points, these well-trod paths.
Stick behind the president who's very, very unpopular.
Very unpopular. And as you say, like Jonathan, your point, it's like, the polling hasn't moved much. And to me, I kind of think that means it's not working. Not that polling should be trusted, but like, who are you actually trying to get right now? Because actually there's this huge swath of the progressive end of your party that is getting more and more turned off by you every day. And in general, my note for the Democrats, I'm just a broken record here, is that abortion is a winning talking point. It's hard to argue with the fact that that man did stuff that now has removed rights from us. But that's the one. There are so many issues that resonate with people, that matter to people in their day-to-day life, and there's no mention of it. They've just abandoned people. And maybe this will work, but I think that that's the bad vibes that we're feeling. Kamala's now done some podcasts. I think she had Call Her Me Daddy. Is that the name of it? Call Her Daddy. Call Her Daddy. But like, Donald Trump has been doing podcasts for a long time, but she's been sticking to more traditional outlets. But people, what is the one thing that they don't feel like they know her? They don't feel like they know what she stands for. And like,
that feels like a cop-out to me. Like, I don't know what she stands for. It's just like, you're not Googling it because you want to be able to say that to justify voting for Trump or not voting.
Absolutely. You're right, Allison. But I think when I say that, I think of how she was for Medicare for all, and that's gone. How the Democratic Party quietly removes abolishing the death penalty. How, one thing she would say about immigration 4 years ago is very different from now. How, just so in that sense, it's like, I get what we're saying publicly, but like, we want to get to know a candidate. We crave an authentic candidate. That's the thing. We crave somebody that we feel like we can trust, and so I think that there's more that can be done to humanize her and not make her seem like she's just a branch that was chosen from the Democratic Party. A branch. You get my point.
Yeah, there was a period where that was the case too, at the beginning at least, where it's like, oh yeah, like she's kind of this way, and like she should be herself, and oh, go out there, and the energy is this, and even like with Walls, like, oh yeah, he's going out, he's calling him weird, he's finally using the F word, all that kind of stuff, and it does seem like, and there's some reporting to back this up too, that sort of like a lot of like Biden staffers and Biden campaign is sort of like molded that to this other thing that they're doing, which is playing it very, very safe. When there are, like you're saying, Katie, like there are specific issues that people have an issue with. Like she's like, oh yeah, we're going to try to get a Republican in the cabinet. We're going to look at Liz Cheney's over here. That's great. She's not doing great in like Michigan, Wisconsin. There are specific issues like what's going on in Gaza that like she could address in a way that does sort of differentiate herself from Biden, but isn't like that old goat, like it doesn't have to be that way. There's a line she has to toe, but it's not a tough line. Like people want her to differentiate herself from Joe Biden. Pretty overwhelmingly. You can do that without just sort of like being like, I wouldn't do anything different except for maybe Liz Cheney will be there. Because that's like vibes, and it's sending off not great vibes, because also if you're a centrist like Republican, you're like, I don't want the criminal genes guy to be president. We're good there.
Yeah, I feel like we got the centrist Republicans that are willing to, and I want to reiterate, because I always get in my head, I don't know. I'm not even convinced that I'm correct when I say this, but I am expressing my fears, and I see a lot of people expressing them as well. People that are even more centrist than I am, that are like getting really nervous because they feel like there's a lot of missed opportunities here, and it is the playing it safe. And again, maybe that's the move. But I do think it was mostly based on the fact that when she took over, everybody was so amped that it felt like the move was, let's not do anything to disrupt this. Let's not say the thing that's like gonna all of a sudden divide this. Let's try to keep people united. But maybe we're just in this really anxious 8th inning of the game, of a close game, and we're in the bleachers saying maybe that they should bring in their backup, their closer now. Whatever. I'm just trying to give an analogy, but that sports aren't my thing.
Nailed it.
Like backseat driving. I don't know, but I am worried.
They probably should have had a Palestinian speak at the convention.
They probably should have had a Palestinian speak at the convention.
Has she addressed like raising minimum wage?
I don't know.
Think so.
Like that and I'm stealing this thought from something I saw on Twitter, but like, right? Like Trump's main thing is like, I will make it better for you in the middle class. And it's like, first of all, no, your policies absolutely won't. But like, you're at least saying that.
You're
like,
saying
I feel like
that.
she has that opportunity to be like, I will make it better because I will raise your pay.
I'll do this. Exactly.
Like, I will do this specific thing.
She did propose raising the federal minimum wage, and I think it got lost because she did it at the same time where she also proposed eliminating income tax on tips a week after Trump did it, which felt weird. So that was the story.
Right. And that feels like a big one that I hear for Trump, but not associated with Kamala. And she has proposed some things. I mean, well, for example, there was, and this is an interesting conversation that I had with somebody up here that owns a coffee shop. And we were talking about that. I was like, how do you feel about this $50,000 promise to incentivize new businesses? And he's like, that sounds good. He's like, but honestly, that makes me feel nervous because over the past few years, it's been hard. And I'm an existing business owner. So what is that? That's incentivizing somebody else to open competition for me down the street, and they're getting $50,000 to do it. What about, is there anything that you can do for me, for the people, the mom and pop stores that are struggling, and like the framing of,
he just wants $50,000.
No, he was just making a point of like that the stuff proposed doesn't sound bad, but it's like, in terms of me, why should I vote for Kamala Harris? And I was like, well, that's an interesting point. I would have to assume that as we got more information, there would be other things included that would be protective, or, but like, I don't actually know, at least at that point, so.
Well, I mean, he's not going to get $50,000.
Let's be real. None of us are getting $50,000.
Well,
no,
it's not happening, but it's a good, nice idea. Small
but
business.
It was a good faith conversation that we'd had after the debates, actually.
Yeah. And it's just, it's also, there's also an element of this that maybe it'll work. It seems dampening of the vibes, not great. You want people to be excited to go out and vote. A lot of centrists are going to be excited to vote against Donald Trump already. And people on the left are also want to not have Donald Trump be president, but there are these issues. And there's also the possibility that like, it's this twofold thing, because you want him to lose, and so she needs to win. But also there's an element of like, well, maybe she won't do these things that she's saying. That's what politicians do. They say they're going to do X, but then they do Y once they're in office.
That's what Donald Trump does.
I mean, there's reporting earlier this year of like these things that she differs with Joe Biden about, but she doesn't want to say them publicly. So the hope is that she will actually re-collaborate if she wins to more of these things we're talking about. But I don't feel super confident about that, because like even her platform is less, in a lot of ways, less progressive than Hillary Clinton's platform in 2016. Yeah. There are a lot of things that are just like stripped from that, and it's frustrating that that's the result of like, oh, we had like a proto-fascist in office. Oh, we had this old goat in the office. We had a pandemic, and like all these sort of things happened of just like, well, what if we do less of the things that we said would help in all these situations?
Look, I really disagree with Biden big time on foreign affairs, and I'm very I I think what's going on in Gaza is horrific, and I think we are actively contributing to a genocide. But on domestically, Biden was very progressive. Like and passed domestically incredibly progressive legislation. So it's not even like, oh, so we have to tip around because I can't now just be this progressive out of nowhere. It's like, if you separate his foreign policy, which I know a lot of people are not willing to do, and I understand that, like totally. What he is a progressive domestic
most
president.
pro-union president in generations. It's that's like, and she can be like, well, yeah, these are things that I want to build on.
Yes, I think that's a good phrasing. I think that using like nothing
build on
so
better
quickly when we all understand this moment in time is part of it. But you're completely correct, Allison, and it gets lost in the shuffle of everything, especially in our media landscape, and it's hard to see, but like absolutely you're correct. But I agree with Cody as well, the phrasing of let's highlight. How about the answer to that question? Like, well, for example, I'd like to build upon this specific thing, using this as an opportunity to actually say like, well, remember, this is a thing that we did.
Not that she's not doing that entirely, like some things don't break through and stuff, but
absolutely, and I want to make it clear in case it isn't, we really, really, really hope she wins. We're just nervous.
I hope he loses.
I hope he loses
more than I hope she wins, but
I think that's a really good.
It can be the same thing.
Is there any other? No, I think that's the only way that'll happen. She has to win for him to lose. It's a weird thing. It's like when you
quite a catch.
It's like if the Cowboys and the Patriots played, and I don't want to do that to Kamala. Who's like not as bad as the Patriots? I don't know. We're Katy, you and I are both
49ers?
Struggling to do
You're
sports
like,
better. No, 49ers I got no problem with. Okay, the Cowboys and the Bengals. I don't want the Bengals to win the stupid Super Bowl. Okay, not the Bengals. God damn it. Okay, who else is in the AFC? The Cowboys and the Dolphins. No one likes the Dolphins.
Perfect. There we go.
But so
I
it's like
Dolphins. I was told I was
I'm going with the Dolphins. So I can't have the Cowboys win the Super Bowl. Can't happen. Won't happen.
Can't happen. Not gonna happen.
If I have to have the Dolphins win the Super Bowl in order for the Cowboys not to, maybe the Dolphins will do good with it. Maybe they'll do good with it. Maybe they'll suck, and it'll almost guarantee a Cowboys victory at the Super Bowl in 2028. I hope not. Anyway.
What? Oh, God.
Let's not think about that. In a thing that will probably happen.
It's fine. No, it's good.
It'll be good. It'll be fine. You can't predict the future. Who can predict the future?
Who can do that? Who could possibly do that?
And if you don't like that analogy,
insert whatever
Jimmy
team,
Buckets.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you guys, I think we did it. I think we talked and solved this nation's problems.
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't, we'll do it next week.
We did it.
We'll get to it next time. We'll get to it. It's fine.
Allison,
they couldn't be insurmountable or anything.
No. Allison, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk, and I really appreciate your perspective. You're great. You're a great guest. We love having you.
Thank you so much. I had a great time. I got all riled up.
That's right.
Good. That's what we like. I really appreciate your perspectives and feeling comfortable to speak up, because sometimes we talk a lot and we get going and it can be hard, but you're wonderful. And I can't wait to read your book. Please tell one more time with the title, tell our listeners and viewers where to find you, all the things.
Yeah, so the book is called I Think, Conversations About Modern Marriage. It comes out October 15th and available for pre-order pretty much everywhere. You can get it local bookstores. You can get it places I won't mention. And if you're an international listener, the places I won't mention, which is Amazon, is probably where you can get it. And then if you want to follow me, I'm at Allison Raskin on most places, except for TikTok, where I'm at Allison Raskin Baby. Don't ask.
Nice.
And then I also have a mental health account, an Instagram, and a Substack that are both called Emotional Support Lady.
Oh, didn't know that. I'm going to give you a follow over there.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Thank you guys for watching and listening. Like, subscribe, comment on the YouTube. It helps, I guess.
Sure.
I hate saying this at the end, but anyway, I'm doing it.
We really should say at the beginning.
We should say to the beginning.
We gotta start saying it at the beginning.
No, at the beginning we gotta go. Don't go away. Don't go away. Please,
yeah, wait,
please,
there's
please.
more.
Wait till the end for a special message.
Even if you hate us, let it play in the background, please.
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 Also,
please. Say it.
We love you very much.
Much.
Yeah.
Much. It's true.